Just wanted to provide some context on my earlier posts on my Instagram story. Maybe you watched it, maybe you didn't. But if not, hopefully this will kind of bring to light some of the things that I was trying to show. Just things really that I felt pressed to say. I don't even know if I've ever talked on here before actually, but just things that have been on my mind, kind of bounced around my head recently. So here we go. I posted something from Middle East Eye. It was Joy Reid and fellow panelists on CNN, hosted by Abby Phillip. They were talking about the U.S.'s attack on Iran, on their nuclear armaments. And she asked a really important question that was, in my opinion, brushed over. They answered it, but not really. Her question was why? Why does Iran hate America? And the answer to that is really simple. They were, the other panelists, the three white men, were wrong in their answer. They talked about how Iran hates our way of life and they're religious extremists who want to kill us. But actually, America deposed their democratically elected leader in 1953, Mossadegh, and swapped in the Shah, Pahlavi, who pilfered Iran for the better, not the better, more than 20 years, to the benefit of the West. And then he was overthrown by Khomeini. The current supreme leader, Khamenei, was a pupil of Khomeini. That is not me defending Iran. That's just a fact. A fact that all three white men on that panel conveniently glossed over. But leave it to a black woman. Leave it to a black woman to ask the question why. You see, she asked why because she has had to ask America why. Why do you regard black people as second-class citizens? Why do you kill them when they're unarmed? Why do you neuter them economically? Why do you do the same for women? Up until recently, but I mean the wealth gap between men and women is still what it is. The pay gap, wealth gap, all that. Those white men have never had to answer that, have never had to ask that question because America has never treated them in a manner in which they had to question it. Everything has been smooth sailing and will continue to be for the rest of their lives. It was interesting that such a lazy explanation such as Iran hates us, Iran wants to kill us all, they're crazy, could be passed as a viable explanation for us bombing them, when in fact they actually just don't want their sovereignty threatened again. Because again, they're not paranoid, they're prudent. It's already happened. And I guess that ties into the next video that I posted, which was Majority Report, Sam Cedar. It was a clip of there was like some radio show where you can call in, and Senator Gillibrand of New York was on with the radio host, and someone called in and basically was like, "Oh my God, Mamdani's a terrorist. I'm worried about certain Jewish organizations and this and that, and how can we combat it?" And Gillibrand basically went on some 4 or 5 minute rant, calling Mamdani a terrorist, basically. She said that he had expressed views in favor of global jihad. Lie. He's never used that language. He said he's never used that language. He's expressed on his now victorious campaign that he will meet Jewish New Yorkers where they are, in synagogues and busways, wherever, throughout New York City, and that he is a mayor for everyone, including them. But that wasn't enough for Senator Gillibrand somehow. In fact, in the clip, she says that she's never sat down with Mamdani, and yet she knows what he's thinking. That's interesting. And it's predictable because it's America. We've seen a lot of talks about anti-Semitism, the growing anti-Semitism, the plague of anti-Semitism. And anti-Semitism is a real problem in this country and throughout the world. But Islamophobia either isn't one, or I just haven't paid enough attention to see where it's been talked about. For all intents and purposes, she should have been forced to resign. I think she just, I think on the same Instagram page, if you were to go and see on Majority Report, I think she called Mamdani privately to apologize. Of course, she wouldn't be forced to apologize publicly because she doesn't have to, because America is okay with Islamophobia. I don't want to lose my train of thought. I think my next post was Das Discourse. He basically made a video about how most conservatives and Trump MAGA people have never left their hometown. And yeah. So my first and third videos, the Middle East Eye with Joy Reid and this Das Discourse video tied in, because again, to ask the question why is to have a worldview of America, not an American view. I consider myself to have a worldview of America. I'm born to two parents who were not born in America, came here as adults. So I'm not enamored by, American intellect or, oh my God, America this and America that. This country has its moments. But the atrocities this country has committed are grotesque. They're grotesque. They're disgusting. Currently, disgusting. The idea that America has some moral high ground regarding the Middle East, and that the foreign policy, scratch that, Israel's foreign policy that the U.S. is conducting in that region should be lauded. And we should say, thank God that America is policing nuclear armaments in the Middle East. Only one country in the world has ever dropped nuclear weapons on another country. Happy birthday, America. Moral high ground from where? In what world? It's not funny, but the irony is that Joy Reid's comments to many probably came across as un-American, and she didn't lie one time. The U.S. at that time, the Dulles brothers she mentioned, one in the CIA and one in the State Department, wanted the oil that was in the ground of Iran. And they needed a leader who would be amenable. Mossadegh was not amenable. So Mossadegh got booted via US-UK coup. It's just important to be informed, especially now when you see a war on intellect. That whole, when Trump was saying, we did very well with the poorly educated, I love the, it's not just a meme. Banning books, suing universities, cutting research. What could be the motive of the dumbification of a country? Perhaps to make it more susceptible to idiotic, not fact-based ideas and rules? Because if you don't know, you don't know. You wouldn't know to question. You wouldn't know to think twice about, to say, wait, that doesn't sound. You wouldn't know. Joy Reid asked why because she's the only person on that panel who's had to live with the consequence of the answer to that question. Why is America racist? It was built on the backs of slaves. Trail of Tears. We discovered no. Native Americans were living here. You killed, raped, pillaged their lands. Civil rights movement. King assassinated. Evers assassinated. We could go on all day. And today, to learn about those past sins is shunned. Critical race theory. Ooh. What's got that? News notification. But it's just so important to be informed. I think that's what's making me get in front of this camera. It's so important to be informed, or to want to be. I don't know everything, but I want to know as much as I can, so that I can have an honest perspective, a real perspective, a perspective grounded in reality, not in. I think Stephen Miller, who probably is the most evil person in the world as far as I'm concerned. I think I don't know if it's once they were elected or just coming up, he was saying, we're going to teach kids to love America. We are going to teach kids to value America as the greatest country in the world. And I just kept hearing Führer, Führer, Führer. It just kept ringing, because that's indoctrination. That's not education. If it wasn't clear, those two are different things. In case that indoctrination is definitely not education. It's the antithesis of education. You know nothing if you're indoctrinated except what you're told. That's why it's the opposite. Get it? Wow, I'm going too long. To wrap up, my last slide was about Rwanda Congo peace deal, involving the U.S. and with Trump out loud admitting to Western imperialism. Once again, that this peace deal secured major mineral rights for them from Congo. I am African. I don't think I said my parents were born. They were born in Kenya, so I'm Kenyan. That's my ethnicity. Humbly, my family's involved in Kenyan politics. Not so humbly, my uncle's a former prime minister of Kenya. You can Google Raila Odinga if you'd like. Actually, he's right there. But I found it insanely offensive how Trump was talking about both countries, but specifically Congo. He talked about, I think in the slide it shows enough of the clip for you to get the gist, but basically, vicious war. They were killing each other. They were macheting each other. It was so awful, and it was a very scary part of the world, very scary. And I just wasn't sure. I like that he admitted that he had absolutely no fucking idea about Africa and the geopolitical landscape of Africa. I appreciated that, because he doesn't. This is the same person that said that Congo was just emptying prisons and sending them with no foundational proof. This is the same person who was lecturing Ramaphosa when the South African president came, using some random. I don't even think the picture was the location wasn't even in South Africa, and he was using it to talk about the killing of white farmers in South Africa, lying to the president of the country to his face with info that was fabricated. President of the United States, leader of the free world. I digress. This that should have been solved at an African table with African leaders in an African way. I don't have the foggiest idea why either side felt. Because my understanding is that they reached out to the U.S. And I think that that's where my disappointment is. It's a desecration of Lumumba's legacy. That's Patrice Lumumba, the first democratically elected leader of Congo, who, in a Belgian and U.S.-backed coup, was killed, body dissolved in acid, and I think the family just got his gold tooth back. I want to say less than 20 years ago. I might be wrong about that. Again, Mobutu was put in, their puppet. When I say they, I mean the West, I mean Belgium, I mean France, and I mean the US. And he sucked the country dry for himself in the West until just now, until 97, 95, 97, yeah. But I'm rambling now. I want to be very specific that yeah, he basically said that like, oh, they never, I was talking to them and they never thought they'd be here. They never thought that they would be able to be in the how? The president of Congo is literally you in his country. Why would any African leader in 2025 never see themselves coming to the US, never see themselves being in the what? It's a plane ride. It's not 1810. Because in his mind, Africa is still, cloth, skin, naked, butchering each other. That's just what he didn't have to say it. That's what he said. It would be absurd to say that the leader of France couldn't have imagined being in the White House today in 2025. Why would it be reasonable to say that about the leader of the Congo or Rwanda, for that example, or Chad or Niger or any African country? Because Africa is still in the Dark Ages. It's just important to be informed. That's why I'm talking too long. It's just important. 6 months. 6 months. America is a fascist, broad day kidnapping, anti-intellect regime. Far from a democracy. The president of the United States, I don't know if it was yesterday or 2 days ago, was on TV bragging about feeding black and brown people to alligators. Run this way. Not in a straight line. Leader of the free world. This is what happens when people are not informed. I've appreciated the discussions that I've had, with my boys in the group chat, be it on Instagram or via text message, whatever. And there are lots of dissenting views and opinions. And I appreciate it, one, because it means that I hang around people who want to be informed. I value that over your actual opinion. We will differ, we will butt heads, we will clash. But if you just didn't care to know, then I distance myself from you. But it's important. I know people who voted for Trump, and we're so much past, how's that vote looking? Or still, it happened. You did it. We're here. All I can do is beg for everyone, myself included, to be more informed. People are voting against their own self-interest, and they're not even flinching. The one big beautiful bill just passed. About 15 million people will be cut off from Medicaid. Rural hospitals will close. People will die because of the passing of this bill. But if you ask the conservative base, it's a glorious day. That's a problem. It's a big, big problem, and it'll take more than 4 years, more than 8 years, maybe more than 12 years to fix the reality gap, the intellect gap, the propaganda gap. But I'm hopeful. I'm not leaving, so I have to be, right? um, I'm hopeful that we'll fix it. Um, Not through, you said this and you said that, but what about yours? No, but just discourse, 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 positive discourse, reinforcing fact. There were senators that stood up on the floor, Republican senators talking about the bill, talking about, now finally, the people who need Medicare are the ones who are going to get it, not the 35-year-olds who don't want to work, who do. No, the idea that anyone is at home living it up off Medicaid is insane. Have you gotten sick in this country? Even to believe that statement is to either you really don't know that much, or you do, but he's Republican and this is Trump's bill, so I'm pushing fact so far back that I can accept that statement. Nobody is here popping bottles of Dawn on Medicaid. Medicaid is not a lottery ticket. It is the assurance that if you get sick, you can be well. And when hospitals take in people without Medicaid and eat those costs, guess whose costs go up? You, able-bodied triathlete who feels that you're, being slighted because lazy people, lazy 67-year-olds, lazy people with oxygen pumps, lazy people with diabetes, lazy people with high blood sugar, lazy people who have lost fingers or who have lost limbs. Those lazy people? Be informed, man. I gotta split this shit in two, man. This is why I don't post, because I could talk all day. This should be a YouTube video. Be informed. Be informed. I'm talking in front of the camera. It's awkward. I don't care. Be informed. To my friends, be informed. To my enemies, be informed. Whoever you are, just be informed. There are plenty of smart, conservative, George Mason has a pipeline of them, who voted for Trump. I have problems with them too, but none of my problems with them are the fact that they didn't know what they were voting for. But I think it's so cardinal. It's so cardinal of a sin to just be like, yeah, man, Trump. And then now be like, damn. Surely you didn't think voting in a presidential election was trivial, did you? Trivial enough to not know what the fuck you're voting for? That is a problem. That is a problem. Here we are, July 4th. Happy Fascism Day. To the Russia of the West. Appreciate y'all. Be informed. Have a blessed day.